Hi again, everyone, and welcome to another library lunch hour here from the Center for Puerto Rican Studies Library and Archive, located at 119th Street and 3rd Avenue at the Silberman School for Social Work. Aníbal Arocho, I'm the library manager here at Centro, and I'm here with
Lindsay Whitwer, the digital archivist.
Thanks, everyone, for taking a little bit of time out of your day, spending your lunch with us in order to learn a little bit more about what it is that we do here at Centro. And I think we have a pretty interesting program today because the program isn't about any of our archives specifically, but rather how to help you, the end user at home, archive some of your own material. Because that's a question that we actually get quite a bit. A lot of people are interested in how they can take a more active role in preserving their own material, or whether or not even the material that they have merits preservation. That's a different conversation. But Lindsay's here to provide some expertise and some guidance into how we can go about archiving the, I feel like, thousands of digital files, photographs, etc., that we produce in our daily lives. I feel like part of the gift and the curse of the 21st century is that it is so easy to create documents and photographs, and we all document everything in our social media, and through email and everything, and our different modes of communication at work. Um, but I guess we don't put as much thought into the long-term preservation of all of that. So Lindsay, how do we even get started?
Sure. Yeah, I actually have to say, this morning I was talking to my mom on my walk to the train, and she was telling me that her phone was completely full of photos and videos. She's like, what do I do? And so I was trying to, on the phone, navigate her through maybe getting rid of some of those duplicate files or big, sometimes like through WhatsApp and stuff, when you send a picture, it creates this just like massive attachment. And I was like, get rid of all those. A bunch of them are probably duplicates. That'll store, free up some space for you. But it's definitely, I think, an issue that we all are facing, especially as technology advances and we get better pictures on our phones and more complicated videos that you can send, or things that you can put on social media that are a little bit more complex and therefore bigger storage footprints. So I really wanted to start with a very basic overview of how some of our digital media works, because I think a lot of people think, oh, it's digital, it exists somewhere in the cloud, in the ether, but it has a real physical component that we do need to think about when we're archiving.
So you mean like when I hit save on a document, or when I take a picture on a digital camera, like the actual electronics that goes into saving that onto a device?
Exactly.
Okay.
Because I feel like we don't really think about that until our devices fail. And then we're like, oh no, what do we do?
Sure.
So I brought some props here today, but so I have here is a hard drive from a computer. Oh, yep, here it is, a hard drive from a computer. This isn't the inside of it. This is just the outside. I didn't want to completely take it apart, but it does have a circuit board up here. And I wanted to say that this is a kind of a standard hard drive that a lot of computers, definitely older computers, have. And it's called a spinning disk hard drive. What that means is that inside there is a disk spinning. If you think of a record player, it's very similar to that. So it's like a disk that spins. There's an arm that does the reading and the writing. So that like basically moves around these little teeny microscopic magnetic fragments to help write the file to the spinning disk to save your data. So you drop this, you drop an older laptop, it can break. Likewise, over time, these things stop working. There's lots of little components involved. If you have a hard drive, an older computer just sitting around forever, maybe it's in your attic, maybe it's in your basement, not an ideal situations for electronics, it can fail and you could lose everything on it. Like this hard drive. This is a hard drive that we used with our oral history project at Centro that oral historians used. So we didn't lose anything from the project, but people on the project would put like their data on this hard drive and they would send it back to us and we'd send it back and forth to them. And when they finished, I went in to pull off all the remaining data and realized that this just wasn't working and that we couldn't pull it off using regular methods.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody's experienced the situation of some sort of data loss where you go to turn on your computer one day and it's not working at all, or like stuff that you think you saved on a hard drive is suddenly not there anymore.
Yeah. We also run into situations where just older stuff has different formats.
Okay.
This might be a little extreme, but this is a zip disk. If you think of a zip file that you might have on your computer that compresses really like multiple files together, when you like download really big like software or something, this is what they used to look like physically as a file. It looks like a thick floppy disk and it has this player. You can actually get these pretty cheap off eBay, but obviously we're not using these every day.
And you're talking about secondhand electronics. They're not making new zip disks or zip drives.
It had like a very short but significant lifespan in which it was used by a lot of people and they said, this is the future. So you may have some at home or other, older proprietary software.
Sure. Different types of tapes, different types of discs.
Definitely with like sound and moving image recordings, like there's obviously been, VHS, you might have old film reels.
Great.
Yeah. All types of different formats. So keeping in mind that these have a physical component, I think is very helpful when thinking about how you can archive them and how you can think about preserving them.
Right. And I think also to not take for granted the fact that these are physical, although we think we're operating with, digital files, the actual mechanisms that save these files are mechanical in nature and can fail. And
exactly.
There are lots of points of failure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So that kind of comes to, well, what can we do if we know that this failure is going to happen? So in archives, there's a couple different concepts that I wanted to make you guys aware of to keep in mind when you're thinking about what you want to do for yourself, for your family archive. And they're very simple to remember. One of them is called LOCKSS, LOCKSS, and it's lots of copies keep stuff safe.
So we're operating, I guess, Lindsay, is what you're saying is you're operating under the assumption that things will indeed fail.
Yeah, that's inevitable.
Inevitable. You need to be preparing your materials as if the medium where they're stored is going to fail eventually.
Absolutely.
And lots of copies keeps stuff safe is the acronym that archivists use.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty clever. LOCKSS.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So the idea here is that if you have multiple complete copies of digital files in many different locations, even if something fails, you'll have another copy someplace else.
Okay.
There's also another kind of approach to this as well, to help you kind of implement locks, which is 3-2-1. Keep 3 complete copies of an item on 2 different types of medium and 1 in a different geographic location.
Okay, let me see if I got this right. You need 3 copies on 2 different mediums, so 2 different formats, so like a hard drive and a DVD.
Yeah, or a hard drive. We don't want to use any DVDs or CDs for storage, but like a hard drive in the cloud.
Okay, a hard drive in the cloud, and then 1 other geographic location.
So that's where the cloud can double as that other geographic location.
Got it. Okay. So a backup in a different location in case you suffer like some catastrophic loss.
Yeah, and the idea there is more like a disaster. Like they say a different disaster zone sometimes. Okay. So if you had something in the cloud, the chances that it's physically in a different geographic location than you are is extremely high, almost guaranteed.
Okay.
So with those 2 in mind, it's actually pretty simple to implement these things. It doesn't take too much effort, but unlike traditional like physical medium where you had, a box of photographs, in a way with digital stuff, while you do have to take some more steps potentially or be a little more conscientious, the chances of you absolutely losing stuff completely and totally
Mhm.
are lower if you're taking some steps.
Right.
You think about if you had a photograph and then there was a flood, you could lose that. A
Mhm.
fire, it's really easy to lose some
Photographs and
physical.
negatives.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, and I don't know if anybody's ever had to have a hard drive fail. There are services that you can use to get data back off a hard drive,
Hmm.
but that's hit or miss. Like
Yeah,
one, like they can't always help you, and it's also really costly.
it is. Yeah.
So if you do lots of copies, keeps stuff safe, and was it 3 copies across 2 mediums and one separate geographic location, such as the cloud,
Yeah.
that preparation makes it safer for you to keep your digital files safe.
Yeah. And what 321 could look like for you would be you keep it on your personal computer, you have an external hard drive, and then you have it in the cloud somewhere.
Got it.
Um, and there's a lot of free cloud storage out there.
Mhm.
If you have like Gmail, uh, Google Drive has a pretty substantially sized storage. Dropbox has a free up to like 1 terabyte.
I'm not sure, but
I don't
yeah.
know how big that storage is. There's definitely a decent amount of storage.
Amazon, everybody knows Amazon.
Amazon,
They're famous for
um,
the cloud.
yeah. I, for example, took all of my wedding photos, all the high res versions, and have them in both Google Drive and in Dropbox. And it didn't fill up either one of them, but they're really high res versions. So there's definitely a lot of storage out there. Take advantage of free options for storage. So then we can kind of move on to where can we start with this? So we know kind of the concepts. First and foremost, if you can remove things off older media, as we call it in digital archiving, so off those older computers, off floppy disks you might have, or DVDs or CDs. CDs and DVDs, definitely. Optical media is very volatile.
So I don't know if anybody has ever had like a box of DVDs or CDs in storage, particularly in a high humidity area. I know that this happened to my parents. They had a bunch of films on personal family recordings on DVDs in a storage box in their house in Puerto Rico, and they went back to look at them, and the backs of the discs were just warped and rotten. It's like rotted away.
Yeah.
So people think that DVDs are like, oh, this is like solid storage medium, but it really isn't. We want to move away from that.
Yes. And there was that messaging like in the early 2000s that it was like there was like gold CDs and DVDs, and they're like, these will last for hundreds of years. They do not at all. They're
Right.
already degrading. Also like VHS. My family had tons of VHS tapes that they just had in their basement in like boxes. And actually my parents sent them off. There's a couple different services you can like basically pack up a box, send them away. I know Kodak has one. Around the holidays, they tend to have really good deals on them too. It's not too expensive realistically. And they will digitize all of your film, and then they'll send you back all the digital files. So we now have what could be recovered from all of our VHSs, which wasn't everything. There was definitely some loss. My parents also did it for film that they had from when like my dad was growing up. So we have all these like from like personal camcorders from like the 60s and 70s film of, my family from then. So it's really, I think it's super fascinating. I mean, I'm an archivist. I love this history, but it's really amazing to see these things that you haven't been able to play, or you don't know if you would be able to recover anything off of. I think that also like brings people together generationally. I know like me and my cousins were really excited to see this. It was, film of like my grandparents who passed away. My parents were really excited. So it's a good way to kind of bring in everybody, because then, maybe you're not as technologically savvy, but you have, children or grandchildren or cousins or people in your neighborhood that you could engage to help you out in this, and then kind of brings everybody full circle on that. So to that end, some of the ideas that you can do that I suggest is, we talked about using the cloud. You could even set up an email that everybody sends, or you CC or BCC important correspondence in your family if you want to be saving these messages that you're sending. If everybody has access to it, then you would know that, one person isn't a point of failure if they, forget their password.
So this is actually a pretty cool concept that Lindsay introduced me to. So you create a family email account that someone is the administrator of.
Yeah.
And then every correspondence, every email chain within your family, you just always copy that family
Yeah.
email account. It could be called like my name is Anibal. It could be like Anibal Arocho. It could be the Arocho archive at gmail.com as the the universal little repository that's always copied on all your messages. That's a cool concept.
Yeah, take advantage of these free services to archive your stuff. At the same time, I would definitely suggest, periodically downloading or exporting this email to your personal computer, to following those locks concepts. We don't want to just solely rely on them, but they're a great place to start.
Yeah. That's a good point. If you dig through the settings of most email services, there's an option to export your entire email box, and that's good because these services might not always be around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to that end, kind of when you decide to put your stuff into a particular cloud storage repository, definitely try to find out what the exit strategy is. Can you pull your stuff out for free? I mean, most of these big cloud storages like Amazon and Dropbox and stuff, yes, you can. You can download everything. That's kind of the point. But there's definitely services out there that offer more bells and whistles, and it might make it harder for you to get the material out if you wanted to get it out later on.
Sure.
So just keeping that in mind. I also like to suggest that people be thoughtful about their file naming. If you're going to be your family archivist, if you're going to embark on being a personal archivist in your life, be intentional about what your file names are. I mean, this could be a lot of different things, but Untitled 123 or random names. I know I received a collection in which they just named everything like whatever they wanted, and it had nothing to do with the actual contents. It was just like, this is a fun word, I'm going to name it this, 123.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that, I know when I came to Centro, we had a lot of files in which the file name was a detailed description of the photos. That also wasn't great because it's really hard to search.
Yeah.
It's really hard to type.
You shouldn't be using a file name as metadata.
Right, except for maybe like a date.
Mm-hmm.
A date is really great to put in a general concept,
Mm-hmm.
Your family photos or something that you can like think about that it alphabetizes or sorts.
Mm-hmm. And I guess consistency is probably the most important thing.
Yeah.
If you're going to be like the archivist for your family, like try to tell your family like, hey, these photographs from the baptism from last month, this is going to be the file name that we're going to use. Right. So it'd be like probably have the date and maybe like the person that took it.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Anything you can do to kind of create some order and organization, and it doesn't have to be that difficult. It can be very basic, can go a long way in making it useful for you later on. So you have to open every single file to try to figure out what is here, what do we have? Mm-hmm. And let's see. Were there any other questions that you had, Anibal?
I mean, I think something that I've seen with a lot of, especially with photograph storage, because I use like Google, like G Drive and stuff like that. And Google's always telling me like, hey, like free up space on your cell phone and put all of your photographs on Google Photos. Mm-hmm. What I learned after the fact was that Google Photos is not saving the images in the exact format or file resolution as I took them on my phone. So what I'm getting actually is a derivative copy when I download it from the cloud. Do you think that's like a major issue?
Yeah, I mean, I think also taking into account that older photos from older generations of phones or older generations of, digital cameras are probably going to be lower resolution too.
Mhm.
I think if you were proactively implementing locks, you would not want to delete everything off your phone.
Mhm.
You would want to consider your phone as one of the repositories that you're actively using. But I think definitely being aware of when you put stuff, I would say specifically into the cloud, you are probably going to be stripping out the metadata from the files, which
Okay.
probably might not be important to you, but it usually like takes some of the data out to make this file smaller. It can make derivative copies.
Mhm.
It can make lossy copies. So like if it converts it to like a JPEG is a lossy file, which means that it compresses some of the data to make it a smaller file,
Mhm.
and you lose some of the resolution basically.
Right.
A file like a PNG is lossless, a TIFF file is lossless,
Yeah.
a JPEG 2000 is lossless.
So if you're the type of person that for you the photography is very important and you want as high resolution as possible and those formats that Lindsay mentioned that are lossless, make sure that when you're uploading those images to the cloud, you're using a service that takes the actual file and duplicates it exactly into the cloud rather than creating some derivative version that you might not like the quality of later.
Yeah, I would definitely say if you're being proactive about moving your files and managing your files, you will probably end up with the high resolution. Like
Mhm.
if you're the one being like, okay, I'm going to actually upload these in, you should be getting back the same copies. It's when you start kind of automating some of those processes, or your phone, whatever software is like, oh, try this, do this. That's when I would question, okay, what am I getting out of this?
Mhm.
What is it telling me to do?
Right.
Um, what is the result of this?
Lindsay, do you have any recommendations for how people go about organizing their documents and their photographs when they do finally decide to use the cloud or a digital repository of some sort? Like how do we put things in different, I guess, piles?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to go about it. You could, for example, do it chronologically. I mean, I think definitely taking advantage of folders.
Okay, so creating different folders for different events.
Yeah,
Hmm.
possibly different family members, kind of assessing what your need
Okay,
is. If you want to keep all the photographs together,
sure.
but maybe you want to have a document of all the events, and that might be some correspondence and some photos together. That would be how you would want to look for stuff.
Right.
I think either way that you would do that, either separating it by type or separating it by like event or person or another category,
Mhm.
are totally valid as long as you're trying to be consistent.
Right.
And if you're, paying some attention to file naming and you're organizing as you go, um, a lot of times, like if you're creating these large, cloud storage, these files in your email, or this any type of loose box that you haven't organized, that's like just having a loose box of documents and photographs
Mhm.
essentially. So
Right.
how would you want to organize those is kind of how might you want to organize your digital
Okay, so you
files.
have to put yourself in the mindset of like if I was just putting these things in a box or in a photo album, like a physical box or physical photo album, how would that translate to the digital realm?
Right.
Right.
And one of the benefits of the digital is that you can kind of intermix. You can have film, you can have sound recordings, you can have photographs, you can have those documents and emails all together in one folder, which is harder to replicate physically. So take advantage of that.
Right. And also you can create a lot of these services provide opportunities to create collaborative folders.
Mhm.
So that's something that can be very powerful to get images from the entire family. So if there's a specific family member that you want to put together images for their birthday or for, a funeral, God forbid, we want everybody to stay healthy and safe, but um, you can be like, send an email out to your family, you CC your family archive account, of course, and send them the link to be able to add their own files of a particular loved one to this folder.
Yeah, I know that that has been really useful for me as a parent to be able to share photos really easily to like all the grandparents and all the family members.
Mhm.
Is just having one place that they can always look. And there's a lot of great options out there for that type of stuff.
Mhm. Um, and there are lots of different services. We're not really recommending one over the other.
No, just kind of what you've personally done or things I've seen otherwise. It totally depends on you, your particular situation, what you might have access to.
Right, what you've been using in the past, what
Exactly.
your family might feel comfortable using. Um, some people use social media for
Mm,
this, where they just put all their photos on social media in folders. Is that something that you would recommend?
probably not, because that's definitely going to be very low quality.
Okay,
If you lose access to your social media, God forbid,
right,
if somebody passes away, sometimes it can be really hard to get access to those
sure,
accounts, and you don't have as much control.
right, because a social media company, they basically they're the ones that are hosting all of
Right.
this. Um, they definitely don't want to put the highest resolution quality image up. You'll notice this if you use Instagram or Facebook, that when you upload the image and then try to re-download it again, the image quality will be really low compared to what the original quality of the image was like.
And they don't always last forever.
That's true.
I mean,
MySpace,
yeah, exactly.
um, and other social media platforms. So I think we're
Yeah.
gonna start moving into our Q&A session. We have a Q&A box, and if you had previously asked any questions in the chat, please go ahead and ask that question in the Q&A, just because the chat has kept moving and we want to make sure we get to everyone's questions. So I'm going to open up the Q&A box and we're going to go through some questions here. Do you recommend RAID configurations or large SSD drives for folks who deal with lots of large files? For instance, documentarians who have lots, capital LOTS, lots of large video files. It can be very time consuming to back up everything to the cloud.
Yeah, definitely. We use RAID array configuration. So that's a type of server configuration that helps, depending, there's a bunch of numbers of RAID that basically kind of stores a bunch of pieces of the file in lots of different places to help with redundancy, and then can pull them back together so you can serve up the file. Our server is, I mean, it's 70 terabytes of solid state drives. Um, Solid state drives are just, they have circuits instead of that spinning disk I talked about. Most laptops now have solid state drives.
Yeah, we want to be moving away from
Spinning disk,
traditional
yeah.
spinning hard drives.
So I would say definitely, if you have a lot of large files, I mean, that seems like a personal, professional investment in what you're doing. Absolutely, definitely. Cloud storage is probably not for you. I think that is more for kind of the everyday user creator of digital content.
Right. But here at Central, we do also back up our stuff to the
Yes,
cloud.
we do.
Since we're operating at a very high professional capacity, we have RAID servers, but those servers are also backed up to the cloud.
And we pay for cloud
We
storage.
pay for cloud storage. And those costs can be
Yes.
prohibitively expensive if you all you're doing is a family archive project. Okay. Okay, my father has an immense collection from his time in NBC in the 80s. They are stored in a dark and dry area. Do you think it is worth creating a family collection, or will it probably be damaged according to your expertise?
I would say it's worth a shot. I mean, if it's dark and dry, that's
a start.
Yeah.
I would say that when you think about an archive, the way I discuss it with readers and researchers that come here, archival material is the evidence of history occurring. So how do you want your family's story to be told, and how would people who might not have any context for your family or your history be able to put those pieces together when you're not around to tell them the story? Um, if you really feel that this collection merits um, preservation, I think you should definitely go for it. Lindsay outlined a lot of the steps that can be taken now. There are a lot of free services that you can use to put stuff online. And if it's already in a nice climate controlled environment, that's a good first step.
But if it is magnetic tapes like Umatic or Beta or VHS or the like, definitely do not waste any time to try to get it digitized. That stuff degrades pretty rapidly. We call it the magnetic tape crisis. So my family did our VHS, which were not in great condition, a couple years ago, and we got a lot of it off. But I would say we only have about 5 to 10 years left in which that magnetic tape media will be salvageable.
Okay, and and this is regardless of the current condition. Like,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So if you are sitting on tapes, you need to move quickly to get those tapes put onto a digital format. How about purchasing servers with multiple drives? Is that similar to the RAID array that we were talking
Yeah.
about? That's a server. It looks, in many cases, ours looks like a big computer tower, and it has multiple bays with different solid state drives. We had mentioned that if you're going to create a server, that you use solid state drives now. So if you want to create local storage of a lot of content, it's a good idea.
It is an investment,
it
and
is
you
an
will
investment.
need to upgrade it every 5 years so that you don't risk failure.
That's another thing. Yeah, that's true. Solid state is good, but it's also not bulletproof either, right?
Nope.
Okay. Can you review options for companies to help with this?
For the RAID arrays, I think possibly, or for
I think
servers,
I
or-
think well, let's just talk in general. So like some cloud storage situations you can use are Amazon, Google Drive, Dropbox, and Amazon has Amazon Web, like storage cloud solutions. So like it has stuff for like corporate level. It has stuff for like with like Glacier storage, this stuff
Yeah.
that you don't need to access very frequently. That is a lot cheaper to use.
but much more expensive to pull out.
And then for digitization of magnetic type tapes, there are any number of companies that do that.
Yeah, my family did it through Kodak, and I thought we had a pretty good experience with
Right.
it.
Kodak, yeah, it's a big company. Kodak, and like Lindsay said, during the holidays they tend to offer discounts. But nothing that we say here is an endorsement of any particular brand or company. Someone's saying that they have boxes full of photos and slides going back for decades. Whom can I call to digitally store and organize in a manageable form reliably? That sounds like a pretty big project.
Yeah.
There are lots of what's the like film development companies in the city that also do digitization of slides and photographs. Their rates vary, so that's something that you can look into. Increasingly, there are also, depending on what your needs are, there are software options on your phone that you can use. Google has one called PhotoScan, and then Adobe has a pretty powerful scanning tool. And as the cameras on our phones get better and better, I think this is increasingly an option for people, especially if you don't really need the highest resolution. If what you're going to be using it for is for sharing it amongst friends, for viewing it on a computer screen, or viewing it and using it in social media, you don't necessarily need a super high resolution image. So that's something to consider as well. Any other ideas about what people can do to manage their own?
Yeah, I mean, I would also mention that the iPhone in the notes section, you can scan to PDF, which can be
Oh, that's
really
cool.
useful. Yeah.
Yeah, scanning to PDF that can be a pretty useful option as well.
Yeah. And there's definitely tons of stuff if you look on the internet about like how to even set up like using your phone to create a little copy stand.
Right, yeah. You can
so
create
that
like a box.
Yeah, like a little light box. So that you can use your phone to be digitizing your photos. Also, like flatbed scanners, there's a lot of good ones that are not too expensive that produce very high quality images.
And there are a lot of those flatbed scanners that are also integrated with a lot of like the cloud
Yeah.
Like you'll scan it and then it'll automatically start putting it up into the cloud for you. Just depending on the software. Um, there are also scanners that specifically would allow you to scan negatives if you have
Mm,
negatives of film. Um, I would probably stay away from anything with an automatic document feeder
yes,
because that
absolutely.
can damage the objects that you're trying to digitize. Um, are there any? So are there? I guess that was the last
All
question.
right.
Um, Lindsay, are there? Oh, uh, one more. Many beta films
Oh,
of
Abyssinius.
Visiones. Um, some have skips. Is it possible to restore this? Is it an accessible service?
I am not an audiovisual archivist, and I would just not say that I'm an expert in this. If you, for something like that, you may consider reaching out to an AV archivist as opposed to going through one of those larger services.
Yeah. If you email us at,
Yeah,
we can provide you with some of the vendors that we use for that sort of thing. So please, centro.library@hunter.cuny.edu is where you would send any emails about this or anything you have any questions about the library or the archives of or the types of things that we do on our day-to-day basis. Are there any Lindsay? Are there any last parting words or advice that you have for people who might be interested in archiving their own digital life?
sure. I would say I know that talking of failure and costs and stuff can be kind of scary, but I think just starting small, taking some steps, even in the archiving world, there was a lot of like trepidation. People were overwhelmed by how do we, store stuff digitally, how do we save stuff digitally, and digital archivists have been saying like you've got to walk before you can run. Taking these first couple steps of just setting up that email or putting stuff into a Google Drive or cloud storage that you have access to is a great first step. Kind of setting up those processes, being your own family or personal archivist. And once you kind of set them up, they can sort of be automated. You can definitely. I think you'll be very happy if you look back that you took these steps. Holidays are a great time to do it. I think,
Right.
that
Yeah.
time where you're together with your family, thinking about family things, or, reflecting on the year at the end of the year is a wonderful time to start thinking about what you could do to take those small steps to start archiving your material.
And also, Black Friday is a good time to take advantage of sales on things like external SSD hard drives, because you want lots of copies, keep stuff safe, right? And you want to do 3, 2, and 1. So you want to have at least 3 copies across 2 medium and 1 other geographic location. So you can you'll get discounts on cloud storage a lot of the time through like um, different services that they offer price cuts during Black Friday and sales like that. Um, Tons of sales on external hard drives. So now is the time to really start thinking about it, just from a dollars and cents perspective. Um, and like Lindsay said, it's a good time to, if when you're with family, to reflect. And if you're going to be in the same room with your family, like maybe you've never discussed having a plan for what the sort of family archive is going to look like. So yeah, think about setting up a shared drive with your family. Think about creating that email address, the family archive at whatever.com, so that way you can always copy the family archive on any messages and none of those messages are lost. um, so that's always a good idea. That one Lindsay taught me recently and I think that's pretty cool.
I saved a bunch of email chains from when I was in AmeriCorps,
Yeah,
and we look back at them. Every 5 years, 10 years, we're having a reunion. We look back at these email chains that we had, and it's
sure.
nice that we had that shared email to look back on.
Yeah, and also I would say, like, don't we think of things like services like Gmail that have been around for a really long time, but we shouldn't take that for granted. Like these services, a lot, they're for-profit companies. um Services change, services shut down. You have to make sure that you're protecting your valuable evidence of your family history. So periodically go ahead and download the archive of your emails. Make sure that your storage capacity is what you're going to actually be using, and that your objects are being stored in a way that you want, in terms of the resolution that you want. So I think that's it
Yeah.
for today. Thank you so much. Um, Again, we're going to put the Central Library email address in the chat. There's also going to be a form that you'll be able to click on to make an appointment if you, in case you want to come and visit Central. That appointment form can also be made. You can also make appointments for digital orientation and digital visits where you get to talk to myself or to Lindsay. Even if you can't make it, we know a lot of people aren't based out of New York City, so we make accommodations for that. So definitely please, uh, feel free to reach out to Lindsay
Yeah,
about any
absolutely.
questions about anything that we spoke about here. We just scratched the surface during this
Absolutely.
library lunch hour. That's what the library lunch hour is just about. It's just an intro course. Um, but this and many other topics are going to be part of the library lunch hour for the rest of the year. We have other really exciting library lunch hours lined up for you. And we're going to have a unboxing video coming up soon. So if you're going to be looking for books to purchase for your loved ones during the holidays, that's going to be coming up. Thanks again. I see lots of familiar names in the library lunch hour chat. So thank you very much from the bottom of my heart here that for everyone that's been participating. All right. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you.